The fall of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad has sent shockwaves across West Asia, shattering over 5 decades of Assad family dominance and triggering a seismic shift in the region's already volatile landscape. This isn't just the end of an era for Syria, it's a moment that could reshape the balance of power in West Asia and beyond. The big question now is, what does this mean for global heavyweights like the United States of America, Russia, and emerging players like India? How will they recalibrate their strategies in the aftermath of this historic collapse? Hello and welcome to Statecraft with me, Geeta Mohan. The fall of Bashar al-Assad in Syria occurred very swiftly. This sudden exit came after a rapid military offensive that saw rebel forces gain control of significant territories with little resistance from Assad's forces. The turning point began on the 27th of November 2024, when opposition forces, primarily led by Hayat Tahrir al-Sham or HTS, launched a substantial military offensive against pro-government troops. This offensive started along the front lines between the opposition-held region of Idlib and adjacent Aleppo governorate. Within just a few days, HTS rebel fighters captured key cities including Aleppo and Hama. By December 7th, they had advanced towards Damascus, effectively controlling significant portions of southern Syria and leaving Assad's forces with little ability to respond. Assad's regime had heavily relied on military support from Russia and Iran. However, as the situation deteriorated, both allies were unable to provide assistance. Russia, particularly because it was preoccupied with its conflict in Ukraine, while Iranian forces faced setbacks from Israeli strikes and began withdrawing their personnel from Syria. By the 8th of December, rebel forces declared that they had liberated Damascus after entering the capital city. Reports indicated that Assad fled the city during this chaos. Russian media has also confirmed that Russia has granted asylum to Bashar al-Assad and his family. The Syrian army appeared to offer little resistance as it seemingly melted away in the face of the advancing rebels. Following these developments, Russian officials announced that Assad had resigned from the presidency after discussions with various factions involved in the conflict. But what exactly led to this uprising? Let's understand. Assad's regime faced overwhelming challenges leading to its eventual collapse. Chief among these were Syria's dire economic conditions. But the economic conditions were not of their own making. The West had a role to play. Heavily sanctioned Syria had a difficult time trying to control the growing inflation, growing food prices, the crippling economy, and the dire states that the economic conditions of the country were in. Hence, it led to many things. Years of corruption, mismanagement, and an over-reliance on illegal trade left the Syrian economy in a shambles. Widespread discontent rippled through the country, even eroding the loyalty of Assad's military ranks. The economic decline became evident as inflation skyrocketed, basic goods became unaffordable, and services crumbled. Protests in key cities like Aleppo and Homs reflected mounting frustration among ordinary Syrians, many of whom had endured years of deprivation under Assad's rule. Adding to this, the Syrian military's weakening position was impossible to ignore. Rebel forces launched a coordinated offensive in late November, capturing critical territories within weeks. Reports from Damascus indicate that many soldiers abandoned their posts, further exposing the regime's vulnerability. International dynamics also played a significant role. Iran's withdrawal of support and Russia's focus on other conflicts left Assad isolated. Without this external backing, the regime's ability to maintain control diminished rapidly. But Assad's fall isn't just a Syrian story. It's a geopolitical event with far-reaching consequences, especially for Russia. For years, Syria served as a cornerstone of Russian influence in West Asia. Strategic military bases in Tartus and Latakia allowed Moscow to project power in the Mediterranean and beyond. The collapse of Assad's regime jeopardizes these critical assets, with reports indicating heightened security at Russian installations following the fall. This isn't just about military bases. Russia's ability to sustain its allies has been called into question. With Moscow's focus diverted to the war in Ukraine, its capacity to intervene effectively in Syria has been diminished. Analysts suggest that this setback could have broader implications for Russia's geopolitical ambitions. The rapid fall of Assad raises questions about Russia's credibility as a reliable partner for other regimes. This could impact its influence in regions like Africa, where Moscow has sought to expand its footprint in recent years. Losing access to bases like Tartus and Latakia would hinder Russia's global military footprint, affecting logistical support and operations across multiple regions, including Libya and sub-Saharan Africa. The Tartus naval facility in particular serves as Russia's only Mediterranean repair and replenishment hub, critical for its strategic ambitions. On the other hand, the United States of America sees Assad's fall as an opportunity and a challenge. President Biden has called Assad's downfall a fundamental act of justice, signaling US support for a transitional government. With Assad gone, Washington has an opening to reassert its influence in Syria, potentially aligning with factions that oppose Iran and Russia. But this opportunity comes with risks. I spoke with Rohan Gunaratna, a security expert, and this is what he had to say about the challenges that America and the West could face.
Syria certainly is fragmented, but I want to share with you that people should not subscribe to conspiracy theories that HTS Hayat Tahrir al-Sham is backed by the United States. It is not. Hayat Tahrir al-Sham has been traditionally supported by Turkey, and certainly the Americans are not behind HTS because they have a reward that is
they are calling for a bounty. Yes,
absolutely. They have a reward for anyone who will either provide information or will get rid of Abu Muhammad al-Jolani. Certainly, Abu Muhammad al-Jolani is against Iran because he has been fighting the Shia militia. He has been fighting ISIS, and he will fight the neighboring countries. It's a question of time, because if you look at the name of his group, Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, Sham means the region that includes Lebanon, Jordan, Palestine, and Syria, so Iraq. So what's going to happen is his fighters, I have watched them when they occupied the central mosque in Syria. They said that we have now liberated Syria and we are going to liberate Jerusalem. And after Jerusalem, they said we are going to Mecca and Medina. So certainly the message of Hayat Tahrir al-Sham is very worrying, not only for the countries in the immediate neighborhood, but also Saudi Arabia. I also want to share with you that Hayat Tahrir al-Sham has modeled itself after Taliban. So Taliban is its model, very much the same way Taliban prepared for their 2021 invasion and capture of power in Kabul. Hayat Tahrir al-Sham also created military academies, created specialist regimes for specialist functions, from artillery to mortars to drones. And so they are emulating the group that seized power in Afghanistan, and they were able to capture power in Syria using the same model.
Adding to the Sunni Islamists, the power vacuum left by Assad's departure could lead to further instability as rival factions vie for control. Observers warn that absence of a strong central authority may fuel interfactional violence, potentially spilling over into neighboring countries.
The fact that you now have the fall of the Assad
Assad
regime is
yeah, we
hugely significant. It is at least as significant as the end of the Mubarak regime, the end of Gaddafi.
But it's not a takeover from Syria. Is not going to become a republic, you know.
No, that's the problem. I mean, it's so difficult at this stage. We're a couple of days after the fall of Assad, after his evacuation to Moscow, to really assess how you kind of tease apart the different threads that are part of this coalition of forces that have overtaken the Assad regime. So you have Al-Qaeda rooted rebel factions. You have a few democratic forces. You have the Kurdish forces. Obviously, Turkey has played a role in this, so obviously not in parallel completely with the Kurdish forces. So many different competing forces, all wanting very much to depose Assad, but not necessarily agreeing by any means on what form of governance will take place in Syria after that.
This complicates U.S. foreign policy, particularly as it navigates a volatile region where both allies and adversaries have competing interests. The Biden administration and the incoming Trump administration will have to carefully navigate these complexities. Critics of U.S. involvement in the region argue that the focus on Syria might stretch American resources thin, particularly at a time when domestic and global challenges demand attention. However, proponents contend that stabilizing Syria aligns with long-term U.S. interests, especially in curbing Iranian and Russian influence. The collapse of Bashar al-Assad's regime in Syria marks a historic turning point for the region, with significant implications for global politics. But what does this mean for India? How does this seismic shift affect our strategic interests? India has long maintained a neutral stance in the Syrian conflict, advocating for a political resolution and respecting Syria's sovereignty and territorial integrity. It is one of those countries whose embassies were open even when the Syrian civil war was at its peak. Only briefly was it shut in 2015 as attacks in Damascus escalated. However, the fall of Assad's regime demands a recalibration of India's approach to the region. The power vacuum created by Assad's downfall could pave the way for new leadership in Syria. This presents both opportunities and challenges for India as well. Engaging with emerging opposition leaders might open diplomatic channels, but the rise of extremist factions like Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, also known as HTS, poses a significant threat. A fragmented Syria could destabilize the entire region, impacting Iraq and Lebanon, areas of strategic importance to India. India's concerns about terrorism, already heightened by its domestic security issues, could grow if extremist groups gain more influence in a post-Assad Syria. Trade relations with Syria, particularly in pharmaceuticals and agriculture, are likely to be disrupted. India will need to identify new partners in the region. Additionally, Syria's largely untapped oil resources could become a focal point for energy investments, provided a stable government emerges. Not to forget the oil race that we will be seeing between and among various countries who are now going to claim stakes in Syria. India's energy security could see both risks and opportunities in this scenario. While the road ahead remains uncertain, India's engagement in West Asia will be critical to ensuring regional stability and protecting its own interests. Assad's fall marks both an end and a beginning. For the people of Syria, it probably is the end of a decades-long iron-fisted regime. For many others, Assad was considered as a strong wall and a person who stood against the West and against America. But largely for the world, it's a dawn of a new chapter in West Asian geopolitics, one filled with uncertainty, shifting alliances, and the race to shape the region's future. Will this new chapter bring long-awaited stability or plunge the region into further chaos? Thank you for watching Statecraft. Goodbye and take care.